Hello, very warm welcome to everyone. Good morning, sabah khair, salam alaikum. My name is Edward James. I'm the head of content and research at MEED Global Data, and I'll be your host today going through the Iraq projects market. As ever, we've got a presentation full of data, full of project details, full of insight and analysis for you to absorb and hopefully gain some value and hopefully down the line win work in the wonderful country, very culturally, historically significant nation of Iraq. Now, as ever, we've got some, I'll be taking some questions from you. We have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So on the right-hand side of your YouTube page, you will be able to see the chat box. If you've got any questions, put them in and I'll do my best to answer them afterwards. Of course, presentation is being recorded as well, so you have an opportunity to watch this again in YouTube and maybe share it with friends or colleagues. We'll be starting the presentation itself in about 3-4 minutes, so get yourselves comfortable. Think about some questions you might want to have. I can see already lots of nice comments. Good morning to you. I can see good morning. Thank you very much, Haida. Good morning to you. Bilal, nice to meet you. Reem, Aya, Nurus, Zaha, Mr. Hassams, thank you very much for the comment about the suit. I bought it specially for today. And I've got a nice new tie as well. So hopefully it will be just as visually stimulating as ever. Say hello, Tirupati Janil. Nice to have you on board with us. I expect several hundred people to be joining the webinar today. There's a lot of interest in Iraq, especially with some of the slowdown we've seen recently in some of the GCC states. Iraq is going from strength to strength. Economy is growing, population is growing. It's becoming a more attractive investment destination, a more important investment destination. And I think increasingly people are looking at it as a means of expanding their business. Hello, buongiorno, Ahmed, Amin from Rome. We have people from all over the world normally joining us. Good to see someone from Italy joining us. And Asianika, good morning to you. You are welcome. So as I said, feel free to comment in the chat box anytime, whether it's even just to say hello or to make a comment or feedback, observation, criticism. We're all ears. And of course, also, if you've got any questions about the Iraq projects market, then stick it in there, type away, and we'll do our best to answer the question. Good morning, Reem. You're very welcome, Bilal. I hope that you'll find the next hour valuable and useful. And thank you very much for all of you joining us. We do these webinars once a month generally. Last month we did it on the power market, I think it was, in the region, or the giga projects in the region. We've also done fairly recently water. We've done PPP projects market. We've done data centers, and this month, of course, it's Iraq. And we'll be doing one a month, every month for the rest of the year. So do follow the MEED LinkedIn page for notifications for upcoming webinars. Also, of course, follow meed.com for information on the webinars too, and keep an eye out on your emails as well for forthcoming events. God Morgan, Carsten Pedersen, very nice to have you here. Good morning, H. Giano Stop. Good morning from Doha. So we've got people from Iraq, we've got people from Doha here, we've got people from Italy. It's good to see that we have everyone from all around the region and all around the world indeed. It's good to have everyone here. Right, as I said, we will start now with the presentation proper, and the format as normal is that I have a few slides to go through talking about different aspects of the Iraqi projects market, and then we'll take some questions and answers from you. If you've got any questions, stick them into the chat box there, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. Also feel free to put any comments you might have, feedback, comments, views, opinions, agree, disagree, stick them in. We'll also be doing a couple of poll questions as well, which will appear in that chat box, so do feel free to answer those as well. And just a final reminder that this presentation is being recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to watch it on YouTube. It'll be uploaded straight away. And then if you want an actual copy of the webinar itself, there's a QR code on your screen in front of you. Just take a photo of that, follow the link, and enter your email, and you'll swiftly get a copy of the presentation itself to look at again in your own time. Nuris, hello from Turkey. How are you? Good to see you. Ritesh, good morning from Dubai. Good to see you. And Tokli, good morning to you as well. All right, let's go. So as you know, of course, we're looking at the Iraq projects market today. Iraq is a vibrant, booming economy right now. Its projects market is growing. Interest levels are growing. There's a huge need for investment in projects, and increasingly a large number of companies from both inside the region, the Middle East, and globally are looking to enter the market to benefit from some of the opportunities there. Now, we do these webinars every month in association with our premium intelligence reports. Our latest report is on the Iraq projects market. It is more than 400 pages of data, analysis, insight, and project details for every major project in Iraq, all the data around the top contractors, clients, how to bid, the economic environment, the political framework, and so on. If you want to know about the Iraq projects market, if you're already active in the market or you're looking to get active in the market, then this is an essential guide and reference for the projects market in the great nation of Iraq. It's priced at $4,000. If you're interested, if you want to learn more about the table of contents or see some sample pages, then again, get your phone out, take a photo of the QR code there, follow the link, and it will lead you to some information about the report. Definitely worth checking out. Even if you just want to see the table of contents or the sample pages, well worth checking out when you get a chance. Good morning, Badr Imad from Jeddah. Good morning. Salam alaikum to you, and another salam alaikum to Enes Jan from Kuwait. Looks like we've got all of the GCC nations represented today. Right, let's start with some of the basics, which is essentially the size of the Iraq projects market compared with some of the other countries in the region. Now, this graph is slightly distorted because in 2024, we saw a record level performance in Saudi Arabia and in the UAE, which extends the graph upwards. But if you look more carefully at the Iraq data on the left-hand side, we can see that actually after Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Iraq is now the third largest projects market in the MENA region. It's bigger than Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and Qatar. And as you can also see, it's been growing year after year over the last 8-10 years. Last year, a record $34 billion worth of contracts were awarded in Iraq. And that's, as I said, far higher than any other nation in the region other than Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which are outliers to some extent. And this Iraq projects market is continuing to grow. The opportunity, increasing number of opportunities, the market is growing. The government revenues are increasing. Of course, we've got some slight instability at the moment with the Straits of Hormuz closed, but the projects market in the country has just been increasing in size, and opportunity year after year over the last few years. Bromika lad, good morning from Dubai. Good morning to you also from Dubai. Good morning, Haida from Basra in Iraq. It's good to see you all here. Let's hope that this presentation shows the full scope of opportunities for projects in Iraq. Now, let's take a look at the data for the Iraq projects market in particular and look at what sectors in particular are the most active in the nation. Now, as we know and would expect, Iraq is one of the world's largest oil and gas producers, and indeed its oil and gas projects market sectors are two of the biggest segments of the projects market in the country, as you would expect, as they are also in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and so on. And you can see, for example, that last year, nearly $6 billion worth of gas contracts were awarded in the country. But it's not just about hydrocarbons. The power market, power sector, as we all know, Iraq has suffered from some challenges around power provision over the last decade or two. And so the investment is pouring in order to build new power generation facilities, new transmission distribution systems as well. And we can see that in last year, nearly $10 billion worth of work was awarded in the power sector in the region, record high. And then in construction, we can see we've had as high as $10 billion in 2023, mainly in the housing sector. But that also offers a large number of major opportunities. And 2025 was also very significant for water investment. Of course, water is the very basis for Iraq's historical success, Euphrates and Tigris rivers, and using and harnessing the power of those rivers, whether it's in dams, whether it's in irrigation projects, or whether it's simply in desalination of seawater. There's always a very significant investment in water in Iraq. Good morning, Ma'alem from Riyadh. Very good morning to you and to everyone else joining us today. So Iraq actually diversifies or spreads investments in projects quite evenly across the country. Basra in the south, the Basra province, historically tends to receive the largest chunk of investment. As we can see here, about a third of all project expenditure in the last 3 or 4 years has been in the Basra province, mainly around because of the Basra Oil Company, Basra Gas Company, the GGIP project there as well. Some of the big refineries, the ports there as too. So Basra has been a kind of epicenter for project investment. Obviously, a lot of large oil and gas investment there, but also a lot of oil and gas export investment too. Baghdad has received about 15% of investment over the last 3 or 4 years. Obviously, in Baghdad, it's much less around oil and gas, much more about housing and transport infrastructure. The Kar province, about $12.3 billion worth of work awarded last 3 or 4 years, 11%. And then we can see the other provinces all have between 3 and 5%. Karbala, Al-Anbar, Maysan, Nineveh, Salah ad-Din, the Kurdistan Autonomous Region, all of them have received multi-billion dollars worth of expenditure over the last few years. So unlike, say, for example, in Saudi Arabia, where the bulk of investment is in the eastern province and in Riyadh, we can see that capital expenditure in Iraq is spread fairly evenly, distributed fairly evenly across the different parts of the country. Good morning, Assad from Dammam. Good morning also, Abu Mashi. Lovely to have you with us here today. Just for all of you who are watching, listening live now, please, if you've got any questions about any of the data, about the market in general, please put it into the chat box. I'm always glad to be able to take any questions you have and answer them. Right, so just to give you an example of some of these projects which have gone into those data sets we've just seen, just to give you an idea of some of the very significant projects, very large projects as well, that are currently underway in Iraq. We've got the Al Fal refinery in the south, near the on the Gulf Coast, in the Basra province. We've got Nasiriyah integrated project, oil field development. We've also got the Al Fal petrochemical complex integrated with the refinery. In Karbala, we have the Al Khairat thermal power plant, 2.8 gigawatts. As I mentioned earlier, the GGIP, the Common Seawater Supply Project, which we'll talk about later, another big significant project, $3 billion. Then we've got sort of real estate housing project, Jadet Baghdad, Rafil City project. We've got a solar IPP power plant in Najaf. We've got phosphate fertilizer complex in Al Anbar. And then we've got new city projects like Ghazlani and Al Jawahiri. So we've got a lot of very significant, interesting projects already underway to give you an idea of the scale and type of projects which are actively being built in Iraq. On the right-hand side, we've got some of the contractors involved. As you can see here, we've got a lot of Chinese EPCs involved, CITIC, Hualu. We've got China Petroleum Pipeline Engineering, CPPE, Power China, and so on. We've got China 11th Chemical. We've got China National Chemical Engineering Company. But we've got companies also from elsewhere. We've got the Al Arifi group of companies. We have Hyundai ENC from Korea, Aqua Power out of Saudi Arabia. So yes, Chinese companies are quite dominant and involved in project activity in Iraq, but there are certainly lots of other international and local companies involved. Right, let's go for our first poll question. So this will appear in the chat box. You have the opportunity to answer. The question is, how active is your company in Iraq today? The four answers are to choose from. We are already operating there. We are not operating there, but plan to soon. We are actively looking at it. And 4, we have no immediate plans to enter. Let's see what the answers are. Got a question here about the link for the webinar. So later on, I will re-show the QR code, which you can scan in order to download a copy of this deck. And also, it's worth noting that this is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube as well. So you'll get a chance to watch it again or share it with others. So how active is your company in Iraq today? We've got 52 responses. 40% of you say we are already operating there. Congratulations. I hope you are seeing success from your operations there. 27% say we are not operating but plan to. 24% say we are actively looking at it. And 9% of you say no immediate plans to enter. Very good. All right. I have another poll question for you in a bit. Let's move on. So, $34 billion worth of work awarded in Iraq last year, about $30 billion the year before. So we're seeing growth in the projects market, seeing a lot of opportunities, a lot of big projects. What's driving investment in the projects market in the country? We've got a number of factors which are acting as catalysts for development. First, we've got strong economic and population growth. That's very important because as the population grows and the economy grows, so too does the need for more housing and for more power and water facilities, more transport infrastructure, for example. We've got higher oil prices over the last couple of years, and we've got increasing oil and gas output. And so the government is earning more money than it has ever done before. And so with greater government revenues comes the ability for the government to spend increasing amounts on projects. And that's been another reason for the increase in project expenditure over the last couple of years. Now, as we all know, Iraq has suffered several, over the last 20, 30 years, has suffered a lot of damage to its basic infrastructure. And so whether it's roads or whether it's housing, whether it's power infrastructure, for example, water infrastructure, there is a huge need to invest to modernize and rehabilitate and expand the basic infrastructure in the country. Now, the situation over the last couple of months has also highlighted the urgency for Iraq to build new export routes for its oil and gas. More than 90% of Iraq's oil exports, for example, are historically directed through the Strait of Hormuz. With the Strait of Hormuz now closed, it's made it very, very critical for Iraq to build new export pipelines. And indeed, there's been a lot of talk recently about the revival of the Basra to Haditha to Aqaba pipeline, for the Kirkuk to Syria pipeline, for expansion of the pipeline through Turkey into Ceyhan on the Turkish coast for export. And that's simply going to accelerate as a result of this current crisis. Like other countries in the region, Iraq is exploring its net zero targets and is looking increasingly at renewable energy projects to free up oil and gas for export or for other purposes. It has a target of 20% of renewables as part of its energy mix by 2030. We've already seen a large 1 gigawatt solar IPP being developed with Aquapower, and many more are going to come online over the next couple of years. So that's also a major driver for project activity in the region. We know too, like many countries, Iraq is suffering from a public housing deficit. So we've seen projects like the Bismaya project over the last decade, and then increasingly a large number of new projects coming on board to build large-scale housing projects for the local population to close that public housing gap. At the same time, Iraq is perfectly positioned to be the gateway to Turkey and into Europe and beyond. That's for the transportation of goods from the Gulf or from Asia through Iraq and into Turkey and into Europe, whether that's by road or by rail. Big investments, as we'll see, being planned to help assist that. So we've got a number of those drivers which are helping to support the development and acceleration of projects in the country. Now, of course, there are various challenges as well as those opportunities. As we know, Iraq has one of the world's largest oil and gas reserves, and that brings with it the revenues to be able to invest billions of dollars every year in its projects market. It's got a big demand for infrastructure, whether that's roads, whether it's housing, whether it's power and water projects. And of course, it's got the government commitment under the vision to invest in this infrastructure. Weaknesses, though, of course, while oil is a blessing in terms of being able to provide revenues, particularly when the oil prices are high and demand is high, the situation at the moment also highlights that if you cannot export your oil, or if the oil prices fall, then so too does revenues and your ability to spend on projects. So there's still that, like the GCC states, still that very strong dependency on the oil and gas price and oil and gas production. Politically as well, it can be challenges around the delivery of projects, as with any public sector, delivering those projects. And for various different reasons, primarily due to the geopolitical situation, it can sometimes be difficult to get credit or finance projects. On the flip side, in terms of opportunities emerging out of Iraq, well, we've got the energy diversification, which we just talked about, the development of renewable energies, for example. We've got the development now for the first time of PPP models of being able using the private sector to help deliver projects alongside the government in the country. We've got the building program, we've got the development of expansion of cities, and we've also got the logistical positioning of Iraq as that gateway from and joining the Gulf with Europe. Threats, well, it's very clear right now that some of the threats is this geopolitical situation with Iran and Iran conflict, Strait of Hormuz being closed. That's clearly an ongoing long-term threat in the region, not just for Iraq. We've got a large number of challenges around prioritization for government expenditure. Should power be prioritized? If so, where? Same for water projects, road projects, housing projects, and so on. And of course, we've got a shortage of water supplies in Iraq, which creates their own challenges as well. So we've got a number of large opportunities and strengths to the Iraqi projects market, but like any market, there are also challenges as well. Got a question here, a very well-timed question indeed from Maisha Mardan, which is, what are the major government entities and project owners driving infrastructure development in Iraq? And it's well-timed because in a second, I will show you what those are. In fact, let me just do these couple of slides and then I'll answer that question, Maisha. So going back to the economic fundamentals, as you can see here, Iraq's economy has been growing, and it's been growing strongly. You can see we've got growth rates, which in any country in Europe would be remarkable. People in Europe could only dream of growth rates of 3.6%, 7.7%, 5.6% growth in GDP. And so Iraq market has been, the economy has been growing very strongly. And of course, that has been helping boost project activity. You can see here that we at MEED Global Data predicting that the economy will grow to more than $300 billion by 2028, with a real GDP growth of between 3.6 and 3.9% over the next few years. So certainly we're talking about an economy that is growing fast and is on the up. And that's also reflected here by increasing GDP per capita rates, now more than $5,800, low inflation rates of just 1.5% last year and 2.5% expected this year. Unemployment rate at 15% is still high, probably too high, but has come down a lot over the last decade. Let me come back to this. I'll answer Maisha's question first, which is, what are the major government entities and project owners driving infrastructure development in Iraq? And I hope this gives you an idea of some of those. Now, Iraq is a projects market which is generally dominated by the public sector, by the government and government spending. And the key bodies responsible for tendering and awarding projects are outlined here on the left-hand side. You've got the Ministry of Oil for oil and gas projects, the Ministry of Electricity for power projects, the Ministry of Construction, Housing, Municipalities and Public Works for basic infrastructure and housing, Ministry of Water Resources for water, transport for railways, ports, airports, National Investment Commission for PPP projects. Industrial projects come under the mandate of the Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Industry and Minerals, Health and the Ministry of Health. And then you've got the various governorates and municipalities which are tendering some of the smaller scale, more localized projects as well. But it goes into a little bit more granularity when you look at each of those ministries, because the Ministry of Oil, for example, is actually comprised of more than a dozen individual geographically and sectorally segmented companies. So, for example, Basra Oil Company under the Ministry of Oil is responsible for oil out production in the Basra area of Iraq, southern oil fields and export infrastructure. The North Oil Company is responsible for Kirkuk and the fields around there. The Midland Oil Company for central Iraq oil and gas production. South Gas Company for gas pressing and gathering in the south of the country. And then you've got refineries companies like Midland Refineries Company, South Refineries Company, for example. So you've got the split not just by segment, but also by area and geography. Likewise, in the Ministry of Electricity, you've got companies for power production, like the General Company for Electricity Production in the South. Then you've got companies responsible for transmission distribution, like the General Company for Electricity Transmission in the South. So you have again, within each of the ministries, you've got different entities or part components of those ministries responsible for delivering tenders for some of those projects. We've got, for example, under the Ministry of Industry, we've got the General Company for Iron and Steel, responsible for steel projects. We've got the General Company for Fertilizers South region for southern fertilizer projects. General Company for Petrochemical Industries as well. We've got in transport, the Iraqi Republic Railways Company, which is responsible for railway projects. We've got the General Company for Ports of Iraq, responsible for tendering and awarding port projects, and so on and so forth. So you can see, while it is centralized in terms of the government entities responsible for budgeting and tendering projects, you also have in them various different geographical and sectoral segmented companies which have their own websites, which have their own operations, which are responsible for tendering within their different little mandates. So in terms of also, and I'll see another question here from Shinusi Lendran, who apologies if I mispronounce that, but about how projects are funded. So again, it comes out of the overall federal government budget. Each of the ministries submit their plans. The ministries are given their budgets. Their budgets are then allocated to individual companies within the ministries, and projects are funded that way. Because it's a very centralized government-funded projects market, everything is basically tied to oil revenues and centralized government budgets. And so most projects are funded directly by the state, by the concerned ministry. There is some private sector activity, particularly in real estate, but generally speaking, it's a market where the government finances the projects generally. Keep your questions coming, by the way, please, and comments. Lovely to hear from you all. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Right, next slide. Actually, let me go back a slide. Now, next question is, okay, brilliant. Those are the key clients, but how do I access the tenders? Where are the tenders? Do I have to read newspapers every day to get them? Do I have to go and visit each of their websites? Well, historically, yes. To access or identify tenders, you would have to go to the Ministry of Oil website and find the ministry centralized tenders. And then you might have to go to the Southern Oil, South Oil Company or the Midland Refinery Company websites to identify their tenders and find those and respond to those. You might have to go to the Ministry of Transport website and then the Iraqi Republican Railways website to get their tenders. But very recently, there has been an effort by the government to aggregate and centralize all public tenders into one single portal. Here you can see it's called the Unified Electronic Portal for Advertisement and Tenders. Not only can you see the tenders, but you can also see the results of those tenders too. So you can see who's won, the value, and you can get an idea of what's happening. It's a fairly new portal, so there's still only a few hundred tenders up, but over time, like you have, for example, in Kuwait with the Kuwait Tender Board, or Bahrain, the Bahrain Tender Board, the Oman Tender Board, you're going to have one centralized location depository for tenders in Iraq, which you can then use to track the different tenders. Now, you've got various different filter options. You can filter by client, by segment, by geography, and you can therefore quickly filter to identify the tenders that you can participate in. It's in Arabic and in English, but it's important to note that in Iraq, all tender ads are in Arabic, and most contracts are also in Arabic as well. So you do have to be aware of that. And the links that you get from here are for the official note in Arabic of the tender. To actually get the tender documents themselves and to get the scope of works in more detail, you do have to purchase the tender documents from the relevant entity directly. So if you want as a starting point, do go to this platform, the ITP platform. The website address is itp.iq, and see for yourself some of the tenders that you can potentially access. And that's both for works tenders, for consulting tenders, and for supply tenders there too. You don't actually have to sign up or log in. You don't have to be registered. You don't have to be in Iraq to just see what some of those tenders are. That said, if you want to actually bid for work for your company, then you do need to be locally registered in Iraq. You will need a local partner as well. And of course, as I said, you will need to be aware of local tender conditions, requirements. Everything is in Arabic language. And you will need to have a banking relationship in order to obtain a bid bond and submit the bid bond with the tender. And like most countries, low bid normally wins under the 2020-25 procurement law. One thing to bear in mind is that the Kurdistan region operates semi-autonomously from the rest of Iraq and has different clients, its own government clients there. It has its own different client companies as well, and operates under a slightly different procurement regime. So generally speaking, you need to be registered in both the Kurdistan region and in Iraq region if you want to bid in both of those different areas as well. Yes, there's a question here. Yes, generally speaking, you do need to be registered in Iraq in order to participate under your own company in Iraq, unless, of course, you use a distributor or an agent. Generally speaking, you do need to be registered in Iraq to participate in Iraqi tenders directly. Okay. So having seen these clients, who are the biggest ones, generally speaking? Well, here we are. All government, the biggest clients in Iraq are generally all government entities. You can see that currently South Refineries Company, due to projects like the Al Fayl refinery, is the largest single client by value of work underway. Then we have the Ministry of Electricity in Iraq. We have the Ministry of Oil for its centralized tenders. Then the Ministry of Construction and Housing. We've got the National Investment Commission for private sector PPP investment. The Ministry of Health for hospitals. Midland Oil Company, Basra Oil Company, and so on and so forth. And in terms of the top contractors in Iraq, we talked about it earlier, that the Chinese contractors are dominating, and that is true. We have Hualu Engineering Technology, we've got CPECC, CITIC, Power China, CPPE, East China Engineering Science and Technology, China State, China 11th, China North Industries. These are just some of the major Chinese companies and contractors active in the market. Chinese, of course, are very active in oil and gas in particular. There are a number of Chinese operated oil and gas concessions in Iraq, and these Chinese players are coming in off the back of that to develop some of these oil and gas fields. But they're also very active in investment in refineries and in power plants too. That said, we do have a number of other international companies there. You can see SLB, formerly Schlumberger, active in Iraq, Hyundai E&C out of Korea. We know Daewoo is also very active in our 4 ports, also out of Korea. Siemens and GE, turbine suppliers for Iraq's power generation program. We've got Enka out of Turkey, of course, very active. And then we've got local players like Al Baham Group, for example. But as you see, the Chinese are very, very well established in the country. I'll be also very glad to hear anyone's views on the data being presented today, whether you agree, disagree, or have any thoughts about what you're seeing and hearing. Please stick it into the chat box. I'll be happy to discuss that with you. Right, in terms of the top contractors, just again, this is just to illustrate the strength of the Chinese contractor community in Iraq. In terms of the total value of work, Chinese contractors have won more than $54 billion and more than half of all known awarded contracts by value in the country. Very, very dominant. But in terms of the total number of contracts won, then of course Iraqi contractors win the vast majority. More than 90% of all contracts tendered in Iraq are won by Iraqi contractors. In volume, that equates to about $17.5 billion. Now, of course, Iraqi contractors do not have the necessary financial firepower or equipment and resources to be able to deliver on their own large-scale refinery projects, for example. But in terms of the overall quantum of number of projects, then Iraqi contractors dominate. And you can see on the right-hand side just some of those contractors here. Our Rida Investment Group, our RAND Trade and General Contracting, our FAO General Engineering Company, Al Eza General Contracting Company, AKG, for example. All of these are very well-established Iraqi contractors delivering big major projects in Iraq. Okay, second poll question today. I want to get your views on what sectors you believe offer the best opportunity for your company in Iraq. Is it oil and gas? Is it power and water? Is it petrochemicals and industry? Or is it civil infrastructure like housing, roads, airports, etc.? Let's see what you say. There's a quite clear trend here, I can see, as the numbers come in. For those of you who might not see it or realize, there is on the right-hand side of your YouTube page, there is the chat box, and the poll is in that chat box. Just select an option, and you get the opportunity to choose the question of your choice or the answer of your choice. Of course, in that same chat box, you can also ask me questions, chat with me generally, or chat with the other people on board today. So 59% of you, 60% of you say oil and gas is offering the best opportunity for your company in your view. 22% say it's civil infrastructure, 15% say power and water, and 4% of you say petrochemicals and industry. So oil and gas, clearly the top or key area of interest for you on with us here today. Thank you very much for that. All right, next slide. Again, just a reminder here that this webinar is being done in association with our latest Premium Intelligence report, which is the Iraqi Projects Market 2026 report. It's a 400-page plus, incredibly comprehensive and detailed look at the Iraqi projects market, full of analysis, insight, project contacts, how to bid for projects, a list and details and scope of all the major projects in Iraq across all sectors. It's a block full of detail and insight. And if you are at all interested in the Iraqi projects market, it is a fantastic reference tool of choice for understanding and taking advantage of the emerging opportunities in Iraq. To learn more about the report, to get an idea of the table of contents and sample pages, please scan the QR code there and you'll get an idea, more idea of the report itself. Right, now let's take a look at some of the key projects currently underway in Iraq today across different sectors. And I've taken 4 or 5 of them just to give you an illustration of the scale of the opportunity. Now, this project is actually one funded by the World Bank. It's about $1 billion. It's called the Iraq Railways Extension and Modernization, IREM project. And this is basically a project that takes the existing railway network, north-south railway network in Iraq, and it's using World Bank funds, loans, to upgrade that existing network, to enhance its capability, its capacity, its speed and efficiency, very much in line with this move to have Iraq become this gateway, north-south gateway between the Gulf and Turkey and into Europe and beyond. And this is, of course, even more important than ever, given the Strait of Hormuz closure and the conflict we're seeing today. So this project, which is currently going through the design stage, there was a general procurement notice issued last year, and tenders for the different components are expected to be rolled out over the next 18 months or so. It comprises various different packages. But as you can see on the bottom there, there's a renewal of track between Al Sufia and Baghdad, about 32 kilometers, between Beji and Mosul, 189 kilometers. There's signaling and ducts work for the existing line, and then there's spot rehabilitation works for the line section between Basra and Baghdad, and then between Baghdad and Taji. So a very significant project indeed. Tenders are expected to be issued soon for that. It's World Bank funded, so the financing is not something that needs to be concerned about because the money is there, it's been secured, and again, a very major significant project that's going to significantly improve the Iraqi economy. Another very significant project, which we saw last year, in particular alongside the Najaf Kabala metro, is the multi-billion-dollar project for building a new metro network in Baghdad. Now, the National Investment Commission actually, the objective was to deliver this on a PPP basis, and indeed a tender came out for it last year, as it's a 150-kilometer network, multiple different lines that you can see here, 64 railway stations. A lot of it is underground, and it would transform transport in Baghdad. Baghdad, like many other cities in the region, growing fast and increasingly deadlocked with traffic, gridlocked. Now, following the submission of the proposals, a team of Sistra, SNCF, Alstom, Talgo, and Sena, and some Turkish civil contractors was awarded the PPP concession last year. But on review by the government, it was decided that it wasn't going to work in its current structural format. And so the tender was cancelled, and the project has gone back to the drawing board and is being redesigned. It might now be tendered in a different format, might not go out as a PPP concession contract, but the aim is still there to have a new network, metro network planned for Baghdad, and that's in keeping with the trend that we see these days with new metro projects planned in almost every city in the GCC, and Baghdad is not going to be an exception to that. So even though that we did see a cancellation of the tender last year, the project is still very much a key government priority. Another big project, in fact, probably the biggest project right now in Iraq, is a massive $27 billion project. It's called the Gas Growth Integrated Project, or the GGIP, more commonly known. And this is basically about using seawater, treating that seawater, piping it to the oil fields, and then injecting it into the oil and gas fields in order to maintain and increase oil and gas production. This is a project that is being done between government and the private sector in the form of Total Energy from France, Qatar Energy out of Qatar, and then the government's Basra Oil Company. It's a massive investment that is, it's been awarded now, and where contractors are already underway in delivering the project. It starts with a massive desalination plant to treat the seawater on the Gulf Coast. Then there is this is the seawater supply project Common Seawater Supply Project, CSSP, and then that then involves massive pumping stations and pipes to deliver that treated seawater to various different fields, as you can see here, West Kherna, Majnoon, and Awatari, where that water is then going to be used to inject into the fields to maintain pressure for oil and gas to be produced. And then that oil and gas is then treated on the surface and used for power production or for export. Alongside that, there is also power plant, a renewable energy solar power plant as well. And there's some very large, very significant companies involved. Hyundai, of course, ENC, Enka. We've got KBR, Parsons, Wood, Floor, ILF, Mott MacDonald, all involved in engineering, the PMC and the consulting work. And of course, you've got big IOCs like Total and Qatar Energy also involved. So a very significant project which is currently underway, and that is going to very substantially increase oil and gas output for Iraq, a lot of which will be used for export and therefore government revenues. Here you can see a little bit more about the different packages which are underway. You can see we've got central gas complex upstream. We've got the gas injection, gas treatment projects as well. We've got the pipelines to deliver the water, the oil and gas. And then we're on the water side, we've got the water intake facility. We've got the treatment facility, the pipelines as well. And we've got the solar facility too. So this is perhaps the biggest and perhaps the most successful and best example of government-private cooperation in Iraq to have a dramatic impact on oil and gas production and export and eventual revenues and economic growth in the country. Another very significant project is the development road. I think this is about $17 billion. This is building a massive new highway project connecting the big new ports in and around Basra in the south with the different cities of Iraq and then through into Turkey and beyond. Again, using Iraq as a gateway, a logistical hub to link Central Asia and the Gulf with Europe. There's various different components. There's a massive $6.5 billion road project, highway project, and then there is a new high-speed railway line also planned north to south, which, as you can see here in the components, we've got the Al-Fal to Basra railway line, we've got the Baghdad to Mosul line, the Mosul Dohuk Zakho line, and Basra Baghdad line. So we've got a lot of very ambitious, big investments there, alongside depots and warehouses and freight facilities in order to be able to handle all of that. So again, that's all about positioning Iraq as a gateway and logistical hub for linking Asia with Europe. And again, will transform the economy and substantially assist the economy, as well as offering some significant project opportunities. In terms of the future pipeline of projects, well, Iraq has the third largest projects pipeline of any country in the region, only behind Saudi Arabia and the UAE. It's got a larger pipeline than any other GCC state, and then Egypt and other markets. More than $300 billion of known, planned, and unawarded projects in the market. You can see here, we've got, of that 300 billion, we've got $9 billion worth of work currently under bid evaluation, where the bids have been submitted and are under evaluation. It could be awarded any day now. We've got $15 billion worth of projects out to bid, where the tender has been issued and companies are submitting their bids. In pre-qualification, we've got some $6.8 billion. And then in terms of feed and design, we've got more than $170 billion worth of projects in the design and feed stage currently. So we've got a very large pipeline of medium-term projects. And then longer term, we've got nearly $100 billion of projects in study. Now, taking that same data and breaking it down by segment, you can see below, construction, which is housing, which is buildings, real estate, malls, hotels, schools, hospitals, and so on, $113 billion of projects planned, known, and unawarded in that segment. We've got more than $68 billion of known oil projects. We've got $22 billion of gas projects as well, $45 billion of power and transmission distribution projects, nearly $30 billion of railway, airport, and roadworks. And then we've got $13 billion of petrochemicals, $5 billion of water projects, and $2 billion of industrial projects. Now, we can only take into account projects which are known about today. Of course, over time, this pipeline will just grow and grow. So it's going to continue growing over time. In terms of what some of those big projects are, then you can see here we have in tendering right now, we've got the Nasiriyah integrated project. We have the Basra Hadifa pipeline project, which is recently accelerated as a result of the crisis. The government has allocated more money and fast-tracked the project. This is going to be a pipeline from Basra in the south through to Hadifa on the Jordanian border, and then through Jordan down to Al-Aqaba on the Red Sea coast and the Gulf of Aqaba. So it will act as an alternative export route for crude produced in Iraq from the south of Iraq. This has been planned for a long time, but now it appears the government has to accelerate this in light of the current conflict and crisis. So don't be surprised if this gets awarded. The Ministry of Oil is handling the project, and it's likely that SCOP, the state company for oil projects, is going to have a big role to play in the delivery of this. But for sure, there will be a large number of international contractors involved in the different sections, the pumping stations, and the procurement and laying of the pipeline itself as well. There's also talk now about the Kirkuk to Syria pipeline is a direct response to the current situation, and of course expansion of the Kurdistan to Ceyhan pipeline from the north of Iraq through into Turkey. These are government priorities. Iraq at the moment is unable to export the majority of its oil and gas due to the Strait of Hormuz closure, and it's clear, just like it is in Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Kuwait and Qatar, that new export routes must be found. Other big key projects include investments in the Samawa and Maysan refineries. We've got the Najaf Kabbalah metro also in the planning stage, Erbil sewage treatment plant 2. And then longer term, in terms of design, field study projects, we've got Nakhil City in Basra from the Basra Investment Commission. We've got the Nabras petrochemical complex. We've got the Rafil City. We've got the development road, as we talked about earlier. We've got the Kirkuk Bani Yas pipeline, which again I just spoke about. The Zubair oil refinery, and so on. Several large multi-billion-dollar projects, all in the pipeline. And in terms of the largest future clients, yes, we've got, as you can see here, again, dominated by the government, Ministry of Oil, the National Investment Commission, the Ministry of Electricity and Transport and Construction and Housing, the Basra Investment Commission, the Ministry of Industry and Minerals. These companies, government agencies, government ministries are going to continue to dominate the projects environment in the country. So these are the companies and entities which you're going to need to develop relationships with and which are going to be tendering the project. Final reminder about our report. If you liked the data that you saw today and want a lot more, for several hundred pages worth of data, project details, all the details of all the key projects in Iraq, contact details for the key decision makers at each of the entities, the scope, the budgeting, the timeframes, the key stakeholders, all that information, the political framework, doing business in Iraq, economic data, more projects data, then please take a look at our Iraq Projects Market 2026 report. Scan the QR code there. You can get access to the table of contents and some sample pages to check it out. So if that's something that you're interested in, please go ahead and scan that. I guarantee that it will be of huge value and use for you. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me and going through that presentation. I'll now answer some of your questions. I see a lot of questions and comments about being able to access this particular webinar itself. Yes, you can scan the QR code at the beginning of this presentation, which you'll get here. You can see, and you'll get the opportunity to enter your details, and you can download this presentation deck itself. So you'll be able to download all of the slides I've just presented, and you'll be able to look at it in your own time. Of course, this is on YouTube, so it's being recorded on YouTube. It's going to be immediately uploaded onto YouTube, so you'll be able to watch this again in your own time. It will remain on the YouTube page, and indeed on that same YouTube page, you can see all of the other webinars that we've done recently. As I said, we've done one last month on the UAE projects market. We've done it on water. We've done it on PPP projects, on data centers, on Saudi Giga projects. A lot of different webinars on that YouTube page. And you'll also be able to see this as it gets uploaded as well. So you have a chance to watch it again, and you have a chance by scanning this code to download the presentation itself and have a copy on your own laptop computer. Okay, so some of your questions, just in random. First of all, thank you for your comments and feedback. Questions in no particular order. Do you think they will execute the Basra Hadifa pipeline project in-house, or will they award it to an international contractor? Thank you very much, Rashid, for that question. So SCOP is going to play a role in the delivery of some of the pipeline projects for sure, but there will be required some international contractor assistance. I'm positive, and the pumping set in some of the installation of the projects and some of the pumping station work as well. So I think it will be a joint effort between SCOP and some international contractors. Next, which sectors are expected to generate the highest value of awarded projects during 2006 to 28? Thank you very much for that from Ahlan Jassim. So we saw that in terms of the pipeline, the construction market has the largest pipeline. That's going to be primarily in the form of housing projects, but also we've seen a lot of investment in hospitals recently as well. But in terms of some of the big ticket projects, then refinery works, and also in railway and road building, that's also going to be play a significant or form a significant component of future short-term spending. Thank you very much, Ritesh, for a comment here. He's saying, Ritesh is saying that the EPC for Basra Hadifa is expected to be awarded to a Chinese EPC, which, if you've seen earlier in this presentation, would not be a surprise, given that the Chinese dominate the EPC environment in Iraq, and they'll be doing it alongside SCOP. And as Ritesh has also said, a lot of the pipe is going to be procured locally, which makes, again, perfect sense to harness local resources and sources for that. Which governorates are expected to experience the highest project activity in future going forward? Well, we saw earlier on the presentation that the Basra province governorate has received historically the largest chunk of investment, mainly because of their big refineries and the GIP and the export projects in the south of Iraq. But also areas around Baghdad and the major population centers have also been big recipients of spending. But generally, otherwise, spending in Iraq on projects is fairly well evenly distributed across different governorates. And I would expect that to remain the same, because at the end of the day, in the federal government, it does need to spread expenditure to all governorates, both politically and in terms of the need for projects as well. So Basra and Baghdad will likely continue to receive the bulk or the largest chunk of investment, but every governorate is going to benefit from increases in project expenditure. Question here from Yakshifra Mappa. What is the effect of the ongoing conflict on the projects market? Kindly give your thoughts. I will give my thoughts. Well, of course, as we all know, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, which means that Iraq hasn't been able to export its oil and gas. Only 10% roughly of its oil has been able to be exported through the north, through to Ceyhan in Turkey. That means that government revenues have declined sharply. And in a projects market where the government funds and finances most projects, if the government funds drop, then spending on projects is also going to drop. So there is going to be a short-term decline in project spending in Iraq until the resumption of oil and gas exports. So that's my view. However, we are hopeful that the Strait can reopen soon, exports can resume, oil prices stay high, and Iraq can once again earn revenues and start spending them. But in the short term, obviously, there are going to be some delays and challenges. Right, some other questions. There were some questions earlier in the presentation, which I'll try to answer. Is the Al Fawal refinery and petrochemical project complex still ongoing, or is it on hold? So these big refineries that have been invested in, for the most part, have been tendered on the basis of getting foreign investment to build them, whether it's sort of contractor financing to help build them, and projects like Al Fawal and the integration with petrochemicals complexes is no real exception to that. The problem is, therefore, that you're then putting on the onus for financing the project onto the contractor or the developer, and in some cases that financing doesn't materialize, or there are challenges with that financing, which means that the project gets delayed. And that's been common with a lot of these big industrial investment and oil and gas investment projects. So while some of these projects aren't technically on hold, some of them are developing a lot slower than initially planned, while the financing is being finalized. Which leads to another question, which is, Iraq looks attractive on paper, but how much of the projected opportunity is actually funded, tenderable, and executable? So that, again, that's the big challenge of Iraq, is financing and funding the projects. Now, small projects such as small roads, water projects, substations, and so on, do receive prioritized and do receive budget allocation from the government, directly through to the ministerial body responsible for the project. So the financing for those tends to be a little bit more secure. But when you have these big multi-billion-dollar refinery projects, which I've just talked about, where the financing is part of the responsibility for the financing comes from the third party, this is where sometimes the project breaks down, because for various different reasons, financing is difficult to obtain and the project stalls as a result. So it very much depends on the client and the type of project. But then again, you've got projects which are financed by the World Bank or the Islamic Development Bank or the OPEC Fund or others, where the financing has already been committed to the project, and therefore where there's a lot more assurance and confidence that the project will proceed as is, because the financing is already there. Okay, some projects, someone said that some of the clauses in the contracts are not fairly weighted to the contractor, and actually even say that the government body will pay when it can, and not necessarily guaranteeing payment by a certain time frame from receipt of invoice. And that's a common issue in many countries in the region. while budgets might be allocated and distributed, it's not always certain that you're going to get paid on time. Other things might come up. You might have situations like we have today where government finances are squeezed, and there are long delays on payment as a result. Very difficult to avoid that. It's difficult when dealing with government clients and government agencies to negotiate terms of contracts. Often these contracts are set in stone by government procurement law, and there's not a lot that can be done about that. And of course, that does make Iraq a difficult projects market, can make it a difficult projects market to participate in. What's a suggested go-to-market strategy for companies who are suppliers? I mean, a typical first step if you're a supplier would be to maybe find a distributor or local agent which will do all that sort of legwork or hard work for you. If you see your business is growing and the opportunity there, then you can take the next step of joint venturing with them and registering within the country. But as a very first step, it would all be about finding a worthy distributor who can help you grow your business in country, I would imagine. We're running out of time, so I'll have time just to answer a couple more questions. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here about tax and bureaucracy and so on. Unlike the GCC, Iraq is not a tax-free environment. I believe there is some form of income taxation and corporate taxation. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that like in Egypt, there are also unions as well, which do work to protect the rights of workers too. And so companies which operate in Iraq do have to bear in mind the tax structure, do need to get advice around the tax that was going to be applied on any projects that they win. And it's certainly a more complex tax environment than, say, the UAE, for example, or the GCC states. There's also some form of other taxes, for example, on income, property, and other revenue lines, which also need to be borne in mind. So it's definitely you need advice, and it's certainly not as like I said, streamlined. In terms of bureaucracy, you do have, as you will see, a very public sector dominated market economy where the government is not just is a central employer, is a central driver of revenues and expenditure, and where there is a lot of red tape, and it's not maybe as easy to, say, incorporate and register your company in Iraq as it might be in the UAE again, for example. So again, it's fair to say perhaps a more complex jurisdiction to do business in than maybe some other markets. But of course, that's changing, and Iraq is making great strides in trying to improve the ease of doing business in the country. Question here, last question. What opportunities do you see for business consultants in the Iraqi market today? Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by business consultants. If you mean something like engineering consultants, for example, then yeah, I mean, we've seen that Wood, KBR, Floor, these types of companies are all very active in Iraq, helping to design and engineer these big oil and gas projects, for example. In terms of business consultants, there are opportunities. Companies are looking to grow and to evolve. Governments are looking to reform. and improve their structures and efficiencies. So there are, definitely progress being made there. If you look at for example, this ITP portal for centralized tendering, that's all gone through a process using consultants to help advise and develop that portal in order to improve the ease of doing business and bidding for projects in Iraq. So that there is definitely an opportunity for companies to come in and help advise local firms and the government there to help them improve efficiency and to grow. And likewise, there are a lot of scope for consultants, local consultants especially, to help advise international companies and suppliers to help them come in to help them win work and deliver and grow in Iraq as well. Okay, right, well, we've run out of time. I've gone over as usual. I can see that many of you have stayed till the end. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you found it useful and valuable today. There's so much to talk about when it comes to the Iraq projects market. I could sit here all day talking about the different aspects and the different projects. We just don't have time. But if you do want to know more about the Iraq market, please scan this code you see in front of you and check out the latest report. And of course, anytime, feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues at MEED, and we'd be more than happy to assist you with your requirements. Again, thank you very much for all of your feedback, your questions, your comments, for your saying hello. I hope you enjoyed it, found it valuable, and if you can, stay in touch, and we'll see you all again next month, where we'll be doing a webinar on, if I'm not mistaken, the power market in the MENA region. Thank you all, and see you all again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.